Werner Aisslinger,
yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Yes. Thank you.
Who is Werner Aisslinger?
Yeah, I'm kind of a typical designer running my studio since like 20 years now, and I was socialized like all young designers in the furniture world, and then slightly entering other industries. You know, there's not too many freelance situations. Like, you're not asked by a car maker to make a car or design a car or a motorbike or a bicycle. So normally you enter the design world through the furniture world. So that's my socialization. That's like the typical socialization. Nowadays we do a lot of other projects, and we do technical products, and we do material experiments, and we do a lot of interior architecture. So after a while, the spectrum of work got wide and bigger. But in the beginning, I was a typical furniture designer.
Where were you educated?
I was studying in Berlin, the place where I live since nearly 30 years, and yeah. But education is also working for other people and doing internships. So I think my strongest kind of experience in the beginning was to be in London for half a year and working for Jasper Morrison and Ron Arad, who are still superheroes, but at the time they were already starting to be very well known in the design scene. It was at the end of the 80s. So, and this experience to be in London and work for those guys was super exciting.
Mm. Do you come from a family of architects or designers?
No, I'm coming from the countryside in Bavaria, and my parents were teachers, so there was no pressure of famous architect parents or something. So
that's good. It was a carte blanche.
Carte blanche. Yeah. Sometimes it's better. I think when you have those kind of super kind of important parents who are actors or artists or architects, you feel more the pressure to be as successful as they are. But when you come from a totally different world, I think it's kind of nice.
But was there a technical interest in your family, do you think? Or because looking at your designs, there's a red thread going through it, I would say, and that's you're very interested in new materials.
Yeah.
You're very interested in new techniques. You're very much of an innovator. Looking at your work, I can sometimes feel that you're more of an innovator than you're a designer.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, where it comes from, I don't know. I'm sure not from my family, but you know, I'm Lego generation. I mean, most of you're
Lego generation.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up analogic, so I was playing with analogic toys, and so Lego was maybe one of the biggest things. So to think systematic and to think in modules, I think that was kind of a heritage from my childhood, somehow, to be connected to technology or to structures and to systems. Yeah, I think that's. Now I lost the second question. The first was where it comes from.
Yeah, the interest in innovations and technique.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I think design is not enough if it's only about shape. So I think to redesign a piece that is already there for generations, like a chair, and to just do it in another shape, it's so boring. I think the job is not exciting enough if you just care about shape. So I think design should be about material, about technology, about the evolution of things, and I think it's kind of a, and that's design also. So I don't think that people like Charles Eames, they just wanted to create a new shape. They were deeply into technology and into materials, and I think these people who changed the world and the design history, they were always also engineers and always interested in materials and not only in a nice shape.
No. You brought a few images.
Yeah, I brought a few images about some projects just to explain you what we do in my studio. We are now 20 people, and it's kind of it's a big lab. It's a 500 square meter loft in Berlin, in the center of Berlin, and it's a very, let's say, wild place. It's not an architect studio with very clean. It's completely not clean. It's a very wild, typical Berlin loft. Yeah. So maybe we go through some things. I show you, this is a sofa we did about 3 years ago for Moroso. It's called Bikini Landscape. It was developed together with a hotel project in Berlin. The story is that the design, it's just like volumes. You can connect and reconfigure. But the story is that we think about when it's used in a domestic world, it's a new way of family life, because I think life has changed. So I think design is not only design anymore, it's also about storytelling. Design has to be narrative. It has to tell you something new. It's not only about, as I said before, shape and color. So on the right side, you see a sketch from an illustrator from New York. It shows how a sofa like this could be used, because I think the typical sofa is not working anymore. You know, when the grandmother with the mother and the daughter are visiting or watching a movie together the whole evening, and they look into the TV. I think that is outdated. People are not looking into TVs for hours anymore. People are checking their mails, they are doing online games, but at the same time, they might read a book. And this island is meant to design to be a center for the family in the living room, and everybody can do whatever he wants, but they meet up at the sofa, which is called the Bikini Island. It's more a central island in a home. And so this project was, it's a simple structure, but it's about the story that it's changing the behavior also, or it's adapting to the existing behavior already in a family.
Why is it called Bikini Island?
Bikini Island was this kind of, okay, there's, at the same time, we did a hotel that is called Bikini Hotel in Berlin.
And a whole series of furniture, right? Or a chair, at least.
Yeah, we did a lot of new designs for this hotel. That's another point, that we recently do more interior architecture in our studio, and we try to connect our product design ideas with new interior projects. So we kind of design special products for the interior architecture.
Yeah. And so why is it called Bikini Island?
Yeah, you know, let's say the bikini, like the bathing, how you say, suit,
the swimming suit.
Swimming suit. It was designed in 1947.
And it weighed 10 kilos, I've read somewhere. It weighed 10 kilos when the woman walked up out of the water.
I never heard this, but that's interesting.
It's an interesting
But the French designer who designed this, he had in mind, because I think a year before, like in 1946, there was the first nuclear weapon tests in the Pacific, and it was a shock for society worldwide that like a paradise is being destroyed by these nuclear testing. So he said the most shocking of this time is nuclear testing, and this bikini was for him the kind of I say the symbol for something that is very shocking. So that's why he called his dress bikini. That's where the name comes from. So we thought it's also interesting to keep this name for the sofa, because it's also a kind of hopefully a small revolution in the thinking of sofas or homes.
Ah, right. Okay. Next picture.
Next picture. Okay, there's more about this bikini system here. And this is a project we did already 12 years ago, and it's been a long journey to bring it to production. And this is a Loft Cube. The Loft Cube is a transportable home. It's kind of meant for people who are working maybe half a year in London, another year in Amsterdam, and then they go to another city, and they want to bring their own perfect small home with them. And it was also here, we lifted it on a roof in Berlin. It was also meant to be an urban idea. So it looks like a design product. It is kind of a house that is a design product. But on the other hand, it's also an urban concept, because we think that in most cities in Europe after the war, there have been built a lot of boring, high-rise, flat-roofed buildings. And on top of these roofs, there's nothing. It's just some billboards and some maybe air-conditioned machines. So in the end, you could use all these rooftops all over Europe to live on them, and they are sunny and they're in the center of the city. So we thought we might design something that is placed on top of these buildings, and you can leave it there, or you can move them to another building or to another city. So this was the idea of rooftop communities, that people might end up living on rooftops.
How has it, what's been the result? Is it in production? Or?
It is in production. It's a small business. There's a company in Munich. I gave the copyright to them, and they are producing maybe 2 or 3 pieces a year.
Okay.
It's a small market because the guy who runs the company is kind of he's a business consultant, and he has no big investors behind him. So it's a small project, but I'm happy that it's still alive.
And how large is it? It's about 50 square meters, or?
There's now several sizes. The smallest is 30 square meters, then it's 39, then it's 54 and 82. So there's 4 sizes now.
And the price, approximately?
It's starting at €100,000.
Okay.
The problem is, you know, when you produce something in Europe, and you have the cost of labor and the cost of production in Europe, it's never super cheap.
No.
So, but if you go to China and you need to order 100 pieces, so they don't start one by one.
No.
So that's always the problem in design. If you have, or you start a limited edition, or you, when you have quantities, things get cheap. When you produce one by one, things are still kind of
tailor-made kind of.
Tailor-made, high-priced.
I remember when you released that in Milan. That was. I think I might have heard of you when you did the Chaiselong, the soft cell.
The Sonata, yeah.
Yeah, but that was definitely something of a breakthrough for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this chaise with Sonata was made with a gel, like a polyurethane gel, and it was the first piece of design using this new polyurethane gel, which was innovation at the time. It was 1999, because gel had the molecular structure of gel is like a fluid, so it's not working like a foam, like compressing. It's more fluent. So the concept was that, or the effect was that 1 centimeter of gel had the same comfort of 5 centimeter of foam. So you could use a thin film of gel, and you could arrive at the same comfort of a sofa that has a thick level of foam. So, and we designed some pieces. The first one with Sonata, and then a series of chairs with Capellini with this material. But it was quite expensive. So in production, it was also a kind of small numbers. But this was a kind of an innovation at the time. Yeah.
Yes, it certainly was. And so was this project.
Yeah, it was kind of in front of the wave of small nomadic architectures and cabins. Nowadays, you go in a bookshop and there's thousands of books about cabins and about nomadic
parasites,
houses, parasite architectures. But this was one of the first projects, like being presented in 2003. Yeah. So it's, I think, also in design, it's luckily this was ahead of the wave. I think design is also being ahead of the wave and not swimming in the wave or being behind the wave. So I mean, when you are, there's always the copying industry that is running behind the market-leading brands, and as a designer who has don't find the English word now, you have the ambition to be innovative and to be a front runner. You have to think about things which might happen later on. So maybe they don't sell so well because you are too early with your idea, but I think it's more exciting than being one of the mainstream guys doing things when everybody does it, or using materials when everybody uses those materials. So I have this kind of idea, you can't fulfill it in every project, but to be in front of the evolution of things and not running behind others.
No. And does that show in sales figures as well, that your pieces tend to start slow and then pick up after a while? Yeah,
sales is a difficult world. I mean, the more innovative your material is you use, the less you might sell it. I mean, this Chaiselong we are talking about, I think it's somewhere here on the picture. No, you can't see it. This is the inside of the Loft Cube. But for example, this chairs we're talking about from Sonata, Brad Pitt bought three of them. So we could never publish his images from his house in Santa Barbara. But he's a design freak, so he bought them. But it was a small numbers, maybe 50 pieces per year. So when you do these kind of innovative products, you don't expect them to be bestsellers.
No.
Sometimes a simple product, a wooden chair or a nice cabinet system is selling better than experimental product.
Yes. Next image.
Okay, this was another product. We made a project. It's also a transportable house we did with an investor in North Italy. It's in the mountains, and it's a kind of a sustainable piece of architecture. It's a bit like the Loft Cube. You can transport it easily, but it's a small house, and it's, in this case, it's completely done in wood, so it's an extremely sustainable building. Okay, now we are already in the next project. I'm actually having an exhibition in the Pinakothek, which is a big museum in Munich. So, and whenever you come to Munich in the next time, the exhibition is up till September, and we show a cover of a car, and it's a playful project because I call it car upcycling. So, you know, the car industry wants to make us believe that when you drive an electric car or you drive a hybrid car, you are super sustainable. But in the end, the most sustainable thing in life is to use a product quite long. So when you have a chair and you give the chair to your kids or to your grandchildren, so that's sustainability, to keep long life cycles. So my idea about this car is just decorate your car and drive it for 20 or 30 years. That's more sustainable, and the CO2 footprint is much better than when you buy every 3 years a new hybrid car, because the production of a car is harmful for environment. So, and these kind of upcycling ideas, even if it's in a playful way now in this exhibition, is about prolonging the life cycles of products. Mm.
So by doing what? By cladding the car in a second skin?
Yeah, it's a skin. I can imagine that in your garage you have like 2 or 3 skins, and then you on Sunday you say, okay, today I take the
Sunday suit.
The Sunday suit, and you. When I was driving, I mean, there's a real car below this cover. It's an old sports car, and I was driving the cars through Berlin with the cover, and people were like, wow, they were kind of fascinated by this kind of fun car, and so I think the world could be nicer and more colorful, and people would have a smile when they see cars like this around.
But what is the suit like? Does it flap around when you drive?
Yeah, it was
when you're out on the autobahn, is it going
yeah. I mean, you're at the point. It was just a pilot prototype project. Yeah. It didn't work so well. I mean, yeah, at higher speed, it was starting to move. So it was not a product development. It was more an idea. Yeah. And if somebody would come and say, hey, let's do clothes or fashion for cars, I would jump into the project and do it maybe in a more kind of a realistic way.
For some reason, I come to think of the car in Dumb Dumber, the Jim Carrey, Jeff Daniels film, you know, with the dog car.
Yeah. Okay.
That could be the next
next step. Yeah. Okay, so when I go on, with material innovations, we are doing also. This project was with Hans Grohe, Axor. It's a big sanitary company in Germany, and we did a tap with clay, which was kind of a super innovative product to come back to a material that has been used 2,000 years ago by the Romans. So normally a tap is made from metal and chrome and all these kind of materials that are durable, but on the other hand, we said, let's go back to where the origin of fountains or the origin of using water, like in the Roman time, and use a material that is very close to water since ever. So this was also kind of a presentation we did last year with them. And okay, this is already another project. So this is a very, I would say, a radical project. It's called Chair Farm. So we made a metal frame. That's it's a more kind of a lab project from my studio. We made a metal frame, and there's plants growing inside this frame, and then you can, after a while, you can harvest your chair. So this is more a radical idea about the future of production. So people might farm products and not buy them or produce them in an industrial scale anymore. Like you know, when you like a chair you use now. There might be some parts coming from China, 10,000 miles away, and so the industry in Europe mostly is an assembly industry. So pieces come from wherever in the world, and they're just assembled in Europe. So it's kind of crazy, I think, in the future to think about some small pieces are transported around the world, and if you think about the CO2 footprint, it's it's kind of a disaster how industry nowadays works. So I think in 10 or 20 years, there could be, like, this is more an experiment now, but there could be a farming industry, farming products, and the next step might be you have gene-manipulated seams. So you go in a shop and you buy some seams for chairs or tables. You put them into your garden, and you can harvest an object after a short time, because let's say the DNA of the seam knows already where it has to go, so you don't need the metal frame anymore that we have. And I don't know if you know, there's a bamboo in Asia that grows 30 centimeters a day. So when you want to grow something, in 5 days you can harvest your object or your chair. So this is more a fantasy, utopistic, future-oriented product about where design might go in the next years.
It would make you unemployed.
Yeah, but then I might not be in business anymore. Who knows? Or being a farmer by my own, or running this farm.
Exactly, running the farm. But you need a frame in order to get these the plants growing in the right direction. Have you got a picture of the frame as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's another picture now. It's not. There's a frame is hanging on above.
Oh, on top of it.
So it's open now. There's a metal frame, and you can close it, and then you open it, and then you see the grown structure.
You can reuse the frame?
Yeah, the frame. Yeah, you could also think about sharing systems, that you have a real industrial frame, and you, like when you think of a village in India, they give it from one village to the next, and they grow something, and then it can be thought in many ways, this project.
Yeah. Is this a project which is totally self-financed?
Yeah.
Or do you have sponsors coming in?
No, it's self-financed. I think sometimes when you have a outstanding idea, it takes time to ask for funding, or to ask for I say investors, or to go to public institutions, and so I rather kind of prefer to do it on my own. Yeah. I mean, we make in my studio a lot of real business projects anyway, so it's kind of a reinvestment in some ideas you do when you do a more commercial project. And then we come to the last projects. So actually we're doing a hotel project, a quite big project in the center of Stockholm. So I'm used to travel to Stockholm quite often recently. And the hotel is called Hobo. It will open in 6 weeks. And for the hotel, we did what I explained before. We did a new lighting project with Westberg. And Westberg is a famous Swedish lighting brand. So that's what I tried to explain you before. When we do an interior architecture project, we try to invent some new products for the project. And then, if luckily they enter into the collections of the brands. So this is now renderings, because the products have just been arrived 3 days before the fair in Stockholm. And this is a rendering of the hotel. There's also a farming project going on. So I think it's a quite wild hotel project, and hopefully exciting for Stockholmers and visitors.
Yeah, it's at Brunkebergstorg, believe it or not. The total ground zero in the middle of Stockholm. It's just been this square where nothing has happened.
Yeah, but I heard that historically this square was the heart of a city. It has just been destroyed in the 60s by building these kind of huge,
rather brutalistic volumes there. Yeah. But going back to the Westberg lamp there.
Yeah.
You remind me here of Arne Jacobsen. I mean, taking on the SAS Hotel, for example, in Copenhagen, where he designed the whole building, the interior, of course, 20-odd projects or something, everything from cutlery to ashtrays to the different chairs. And
they are still bestsellers.
Still bestsellers, totally timeless.
Yeah.
Is there an advantage in getting that type of very clear brief that this is for a hotel? Does that make you more clear thinking?
I must think that when I started as a designer, like being a young designer, I always thought just about my products as a sculpture and in front of a white wall. So I never saw the objects being used in public areas or in private housing. So I just saw the object, the sculpture. And I think being more involved in interior architecture, I see that you must see every object in a context, and it's not alone in the world. So it has to be connected, and it has to be part of a big collage of things, of materials, of colors, of finishes, of surfaces. So I think this was the best case that happened in history, the Arne Jacobsen Hotel, and I think that it's hard to achieve this again. But it's a challenge for me to design something for. In this case, for a hotel, or for a restaurant, or for a bar, or for for an office, because when you know the daily use of it, and you look behind the scenes of an operative world like a hotel, you can design things differently because you know what people use and what works and what is easy to clean and what is difficult to maintain. So I think it's kind of a next level of being a product designer. If you know how things have to be and have to be used, you can kind of, there's a kickback from being an interior architect and being a product designer. I think it's a next value if you don't see just the sculpture of an object without the context.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that you will be moving more into interior design in the future?
Yeah, it looks like at the moment we are doing more and more interior architecture. One reason is also because it's a real business. You know, product design. I mean, I don't know if there's some designers here. Product design is always it's always a game. When you go to Italy and show a chair to Moroso, they might always say, "Nah, show us something and let's see." And they never talk about money, so it's always a game. And maybe they take the chair in the collection, maybe not. And then, but you have invested already 2 years of work until this moment might happen that they show it on a fair. But even when they show it on a fair, you don't know if they sell it, and if they don't sell it, you never get your royalties. So, and you can run an office with 2 or 3 people on this royalty business, but it's not real. I mean, interior architecture is real. There's a investor, and there's let's say a hotel company, and there's a deadline, there's an opening day, and everybody wants to have the building finished, and there's contracts, and it's a real world. So I'm after being 20 years a designer, I like this real business because I know I can pay my people and my studio, and I know the budget, and it's more calculable. When you are a product designer, it's always a game, and this game you can survive your own, like on your own in this game, but it's difficult to
running a studio
to run it and run a big studio with it. It's I think some might do it, like people like Philip Stark or Citerio. There's some people who make big money because they work for thousands of brands and they do a lot of, let's say, high level products. But I think it's more this royalty system is more from the past. It's not working so much anymore because you know, from fashion industry, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, there was winter season and summer season. When you talk to a fashion designer nowadays, he will tell you that he's doing 12 or maybe 24 collections a year for big brands. So there's much of a rush nowadays, and it's the same in the design world. I think all the brands, also here and on all the fairs on the world, they always try to show innovations and show news and show new products. But that means on the other hand that the products they have been presenting last year are not important anymore. So they replace continuously their existing product portfolio with new products, which means that when you are the designer doing the chair from last year, they are not selling this chair anymore with the same power because they do another same type of chair the next year. So so the products don't have the time anymore to produce the kickback in terms of sales that you and also the brand invested in the. Okay.
It'd be over in 2 seconds.
So the cycle of product innovation is accelerating and it's getting speedier, and that's a problem for brands because they are continuously investing in new ideas and they hardly get a kickback from the market. It's also bad for designers because this rush of product innovation doesn't make your personal product or your like having a long life cycle. We talked about Arne Jacobsen, and his classics are still on the market since 40 or 50 years, and that's the goal.
Mm. Thank you for that, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Okay.